First story, the Bruno Borges case, 2017, Brazil. The silence in the library, heavy with unspoken stories and forgotten lore, became the starting point. Dust motes danced in the faint rays of sunlight filtering through the tall windows, illuminating rows upon rows of ancient texts. It was here, amongst the whispers of history and the scent of decaying paper, that I first stumbled upon the threads that would unravel my reality. The Bruno Borges case, a local enigma, a young man vanishing from a room filled with cryptic symbols, became more than just a news story. It was a reflection, a distorted mirror of my own burgeoning obsession. I was drawn to the edges of understanding, the places where logic frayed and the unexplained took root. Symbols, codes, lost languages. These weren't just academic curiosities, they felt like keys to a hidden world, a reality lurking just beneath the surface of our mundane existence. Like Bruno, I delved into the esoteric, spending countless nights surrounded by books and cryptic notes, convinced I was on the verge of a breakthrough, of uncovering a truth that humanity had long forgotten, or perhaps deliberately suppressed. My apartment, mirroring Borges' own, transformed into a canvas of my growing fascination. Walls adorned with sketches and writings that seemed to hum with an unseen energy. But what began as intellectual curiosity morphed into something darker, something unsettling. The symbols started to feel less like research and more like a summons. The line between seeking knowledge and being sought by it blurred. Isolation became my constant companion, the outside world fading as I plunged deeper into the labyrinth of my own making. A creeping unease settled in, a sense that I was no longer in control, that I was being guided, or perhaps manipulated, by forces I couldn't comprehend. The whispers of the Bruno Borges case echoed in the back of my mind, a chilling premonition of what lay ahead. Then, one ordinary Tuesday evening, amidst the familiar clutter of my symbol-laden room, the world shifted. The hum in the air intensified, the shadows deepened, and a cold dread washed over me. One moment I was deciphering ancient glyphs, the next, everything went black. They searched for me, puzzled by the cryptic messages I left behind, the strange atmosphere of my apartment. They speculated, they whispered, they feared the worst. But none of them could even begin to imagine the terrifying truth of where I had gone. Growing up in Brasilia, under the vast, often unsettlingly clear skies of the Brazilian plateau, a sense of cosmic insignificance was almost baked into the air. The city itself, a modernist dream imposed on ancient land, felt both artificial and strangely connected to something larger, something unseen. From childhood I was different, an introspective soul in a world that often valued extroversion. While others chased fleeting trends, I sought solace in libraries, drawn to forgotten histories and whispered myths, a quiet rebellion against the mundane reality presented to me. My fascination with the Bruno Borges case wasn't merely morbid curiosity. It was a jolt of recognition. Here was someone else, a fellow Brazilian, who had ventured down a similar path of esoteric exploration, leaving behind a similar trail of cryptic symbols and unanswered questions. Bruno, like me, seemed to be searching for something beyond the veil, a hidden layer of reality that most people ignored. His disappearance resonated deeply, fueling my own conviction that there were secrets out there, powerful and potentially dangerous, waiting to be uncovered. My apartment, nestled in a quiet corner of the city, became my sanctuary and my workshop. It transformed into a reflection of my inner world, a space where the lines between reality and the esoteric blurred. Bookshelves overflowed with volumes on ancient civilizations, cryptography, and unexplained phenomena. The walls, initially bare, gradually became canvases for my research, adorned with sketches of symbols, diagrams of constellations, and coded phrases inspired by forgotten languages and whispered legends. It was a space of intense focus, of relentless pursuit, but also increasingly of a growing unease. My motivation wasn't fame or fortune, but something far more primal, a yearning for truth, a desperate need to understand our place in the universe. I felt an almost visceral pull towards the unknown, a conviction that there was more to reality than met the eye. Like Bruno, I was driven by a thirst for lost knowledge, a belief that ancient wisdom held the key to unlocking profound secrets about human existence and our connection to something else. But unlike Bruno, I was about to discover the terrifying price of seeking answers that were perhaps best left buried. The symbols on my apartment walls, initially just echoes of Bruno, Borghi's cryptic room now pulsed with an unsettling alien luminescence. It was no longer about deciphering lost knowledge. The codes were activating something terrifying, something otherworldly. A presence, unseen yet palpable, watched from beyond, and the symbols, once keys to understanding, had become a lock, trapping me in a reality I hadn't sought, and from which there seemed no escape. The pulsing symbols weren't just unsettling decorations anymore. They were active, drawing something in. My initial goal, the pursuit of lost knowledge, twisted into a desperate fight for understanding, then survival. What were these beings? What did they want? Escape became paramount. But escape from what? From a presence that felt both internal and external, a haunting that transcended the physical walls of my apartment. My sanctuary had become a cage, the symbols now bars, glowing with an alien light. The first obstacle was the sheer incomprehensibility of it all. Human language, logic, reason, they were useless against this thing. Trying to decipher the codes was like attempting to solve a cosmic riddle with earthly rules, a frustrating and terrifying exercise in futility. Every symbol, every coded message, now seemed like a step deeper into a trap, a path laid out not by me, but by them. Understanding their language, their intentions, felt like grasping smoke, an impossible task that only deepened the encroaching dread. Reaching out for help was a fleeting thought, quickly dismissed. Who would believe me? My family, already worried about my obsession with the esoteric, would see this as the final descent into madness, a confirmation of their worst fears. Friends would offer sympathetic smiles and concerned glances, recommending therapy, not interdimensional intervention. To explain the unexplainable would be to invite ridicule, to solidify their perception of me as unstable, mirroring the public's judgment of Bruno Borges's own family. Isolation became my only shield, and my deepest prison. Yet, the mystery of Bruno Borges lingered, a morbid parallel that offered a sliver of desperate hope. He had vanished, then returned, changed, but alive. Could his experience hold a key? Was there a way back? This question became a fragile subplot, a desperate thread to cling to in the face of overwhelming terror. But even as I grasped at this faint hope, the pulsing symbols intensified and the silence in my apartment grew heavier, colder. promising not answers but something far more sinister. The hum intensified, no longer just a background vibration, but a resonant thrumming that vibrated through my teeth, my bones, my very consciousness. Then, the symbols on the walls erupted in light, a blinding, pulsating glow that banished the shadows and filled the room with an otherworldly energy. It wasn't visual light alone. It was a sensation, a feeling of being bathed in something alien, something alive. And then, the voice. Not an auditory voice, not sounds carried on air, but a voice inside my head. Clear, cold, and utterly devoid of human emotion. It bypassed my ears, my language centers, speaking directly to my thoughts, to my soul. Your search is concluded. We are here. The words echoed within me, not as spoken language, but as pure concept, as raw, undeniable meaning. The symbols weren't just keys. They were beacons, and the beacon had been answered. Panic seized me, a cold, paralyzing wave that washed away the intellectual curiosity, the detached fascination. This was real. They were real, and they were inside my head. The comfortable walls of my apartment suddenly felt thin, porous, offering no protection against this unseen, all-pervading presence. My sanctuary had been breached, my mind invaded. The rules had changed. The game, if it ever was one, had taken a terrifyingly serious turn. The voice was silent now, but the lingering resonance of its message hung heavy in the air, in my mind, in the very fabric of the room. The implication was clear, terrifying. I was no longer the seeker, I was the sought. My quest for knowledge had inadvertently opened a door, and something had stepped through. Escape was no longer just a thought. It was a primal instinct, a desperate need to break free from this unseen, insidious presence. The hunt had begun, but I was no longer the hunter. I was the prey. The chilling words, "We are here," weren't just a message, they were a shift in reality. My apartment, once a refuge, now felt transparent, vulnerable. Sleep became impossible, replaced by a hyper-vigilant awareness, every creak of the building, every distant siren, amplifying the sense of unseen watchers. The immediate consequence was a crushing paranoia, a feeling of being constantly observed, analyzed, prepped for an unknown purpose. Escape was the primal urge, but escape to where? The threat wasn't physical, not yet, but insidious, a mental invasion that transcended walls and locks. A new challenge emerged, deciphering their intentions. Were they malevolent, curious, or something beyond human categories? The writings on the walls, once symbols of my quest for knowledge, now seemed like a potential Rosetta Stone, a possible key to understanding the entities that had breached my reality. But approaching them again felt like approaching a live wire, dangerous and unpredictable. My motivation shifted from seeking abstract knowledge to seeking survival knowledge. Understanding them became the only path to potential escape, or at least to understanding. The terms of my captivity should escape prove impossible. The Bruno Borges parallel intensified. Had he experienced something similar? His cryptic return, his refusal to explain, now seemed less like madness and more like a burdened silence, the silence of someone who had seen too much, who knew the futility of human language against such an encounter. The subplot of his disappearance and reappearance became more urgent, less a morbid curiosity, and more a desperate search for precedent, for a possible roadmap through this terrifying new reality. Was his silence a warning, or a testament to the impossibility of explaining the unexplainable? The answer, I feared, was out there, buried in the echoes of his vanished room, and now, echoing in the silence of my own. The silence in my apartment, twisted into something predatory, a suffocating hush punctuated by sharp, unsettling clicks from the walls themselves. It was as if the symbols had become listening devices, their alien luminescence intensifying with each intrusive sound. The voice returned, colder, more demanding, no longer just delivering messages but excavating my mind, probing my memories, my deepest fears. Escape became a phantom limb, a desire without possibility, their omnipresent awareness crushing any hope of evasion. The Bruno Borges mystery transformed from a parallel into an obsession. His silence, his vanished room, his cryptic return, they held a desperate allure. Was there a hidden pattern, a vulnerability in his case that could be my key or my downfall? The stakes escalated. Understanding them was no longer about intellectual curiosity, but about sheer survival. Every shadow deepened, every unexplained noise became a potential signal, a step closer to an unknown, terrifying climax. The walls weren't just listening, they were closing in. The intrusive voice, now a constant companion, shifted its tone. No longer just probing, it began to guide, subtly, insidiously. Images flashed in my mind, not of alien landscapes, but of my own city, Brasilia, specifically, familiar locations interwoven with the symbols from my walls, and, chillingly, symbols from Bruno Borges' room. The voice whispered of convergence, of a nexus point, hinting that the answer to my captivity, and perhaps Bruno's mystery, lay not in escaping them, but in embracing something. This shift was the turning point, from resisting abduction to a terrifying coerced acceptance. Desperate, clinging to any thread of hope, I revisited everything I knew about Bruno's case. Online forums, news articles, police reports. I devoured it all again, searching for patterns I had missed. And then I saw it. Recurring locations in Brasilia mentioned in connection to his disappearance. Specific monuments, parks, even streets. Locations that now resonated with the images the voice was planting in my mind. A terrifying realization dawned. Bruno hadn't just vanished, he had gone somewhere specific, somewhere they wanted him to go. And now they wanted me to follow. Fear warred with a perverse curiosity, a grim acceptance that my fate was intertwined with Bruno's, and that the climax wasn't escape, but confrontation, at a place of their choosing. The voice steered me towards specific locations in Brasilia, each one a place whispered in connection to Bruno's vanishing act. The National Museum, the JK Bridge, even Sector Hotelero Norte, landmarks from news reports now pulsing with a sickening familiarity in my mind's eye. It felt like a breadcrumb trail, laid not for me, but through me, each location a waypoint on a terrifying, predetermined path. The city itself, once familiar, became a labyrinth of dread, each iconic landmark now tainted with an alien purpose. A perverse sense of inevitability settled in. Resistance felt futile, like struggling against a riptide. The voice was too pervasive, its influence too deeply woven into my thoughts. I tried to deviate, to ignore the mental nudges, to seek refuge in familiar routines, but the hum intensified, the symbols flared, and the inner voice sharpened its tone, a cold, impatient directive. My apartment, once a cage, now felt like a launchpad, preparing me for a journey I desperately didn't want to take. In my obsessive re-examination of Bruno's case files, I found it almost hidden in plain sight. A symbol subtly etched into a photograph of his room. A symbol I recognized not from ancient texts, but from my own wall. A chilling jolt. It wasn't just a parallel. It was a connection, a shared language. Bruno hadn't just stumbled upon something. He had been chosen, just as I was now. This wasn't random. It was orchestrated. The minor resolution. Bruno's case wasn't just a mystery. It was a blueprint. This realization wasn't comforting, but clarifying. The locations weren't arbitrary. They were components of a larger design, a stage set for what? Confrontation? Transformation? The foreshadowing was subtle, yet undeniable. The voice hinted at union, ascension, words laced with a sinister ambiguity. The city, Bruno's case, my abduction. Threads were converging, weaving a tapestry of dread, leading to an unknown, terrifying center. Sleep offered no escape. Only fragmented visions of these locations, distorted, alien-infused, symbols superimposed on familiar landmarks. Each dream was a rehearsal, each location a step closer to the inevitable climax. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, the city outside my window mirroring the terrifying landscapes of my subconscious. The stage was set, the players positioned. The voice's final direction was clear, devoid of any lingering gentleness. Sector Hotelero Norte. Midnight. No explanation, no negotiation, just a cold, unwavering command. Resistance was gone, replaced by a chilling resignation. Sector Hotelero Norte. The point of no return. Midnight. The word echoed in my mind, a death knell tolling for my old life. Sector Hotelero Norte. The location felt arbitrary yet loaded. A generic hotel district in Brasilia, now transformed into a nexus of dread. The final hours crawled by, each tick of the clock amplifying the suffocating tension. My last challenge wasn't a physical obstacle, but a mental one, accepting the inevitable. Escape fantasies had withered, replaced by a grim resignation, a cold understanding that this wasn't a test of will, but a predetermined destination. The weight of Bruno Borges' story pressed down on me, a suffocating blanket of shared fate. His silence, his cryptic room, his return, all pointed to this moment, this convergence. Was I walking in his footsteps? Or was he, in some unknowable way, walking with me? The narrative threads of our separate searches for truth were now twisted together, inextricably bound to this midnight rendezvous. The emotional stakes were brutally clear. Not just my life, but perhaps my very essence, hung in the balance. Leaving my apartment felt surreal, like stepping out of a dream and into a nightmare. The city lights, the sounds of traffic, the mundane normalcy of Brasilia at night, all seemed alien, detached, utterly irrelevant to the cosmic horror closing in. Each step towards Sector Hotelero Norte was a step deeper into the unknown, a surrender to the inexorable pull of the alien will. There was no fight left, only a terrifying, hollow acceptance. The narrative threads had converged, the stage was set. The final act was about to begin. Sector Hotelero Norte at midnight was deceptively normal, the hum of late-night traffic masking an undercurrent of absolute dread. As I reached the designated hotel, the voice intensified. No longer a whisper, but a command. Enter. It is time. The lobby was deserted, air thick with an unnatural stillness. Inside, the symbols manifested not on walls, but in the air itself, swirling vortexes of light drawing me towards a specific room number. This was the convergence, the confrontation not with physical beings, but with something far more profound, a dissolving of reality itself. The room was empty, yet pulsed with the same alien energy as my apartment, amplified tenfold. The symbols coalesced, forming a swirling portal, and the voice resonated one final time. Union, ascension. Then, blinding light, a sensation of being pulled apart and reformed, and then, silence. I was back, disoriented in the hotel room, the symbols gone, the air still. The climax wasn't a battle, but a merging, a terrifying integration with something beyond comprehension. Like Bruno, I returned, inexplicably, leaving behind no trace but the echoes in my mind. The subplots converged. Bruno's mystery wasn't solved, but mirrored, his silence now my own. The resolution is not an answer, but a chilling confirmation. The truth is out there, and contact changes you irrevocably. The thematic closure is stark. Some doors are better left unopened, some knowledge too dangerous to seek. The call to action is not to search, but to heed the silence, to recognize the boundaries of human understanding, and to understand that sometimes the greatest horror lies not in the unknown, but in the terrifying glimpse of the truth that lies just beyond our perception. Listen closely to the silences, for they may be whispering warnings you cannot afford to ignore. I returned, physically whole, yet irrevocably fractured. The room in Sector Hotelero Norte held no answers, only a terrifying transformation. Like Bruno, explanation felt futile, language inadequate to convey the cosmic violation, the merging with something utterly alien. My character arc wasn't one of triumph, but of chilling awareness. The naive seeker of truth became the burdened witness to a reality humanity is not meant to grasp. The epilogue isn't closure, but an opening to a permanent, unsettling new normal, a life lived in the shadow of the unexplainable. The moral lesson, etched in the silence of my return, is stark. Curiosity can be a doorway to terror. Some mysteries are sacred, boundaries drawn for our protection. My fate, mirroring Bruno's, serves as a chilling future hint. We are not alone, and some encounters leave scars that words cannot heal. Our fates are now intertwined, two Brazilian stories whispering the same terrifying truth across the silence. The call to action isn't to seek answers, but to recognize the questions we shouldn't ask, to respect the veil, to heed the warnings, in unexplained disappearances, in cryptic symbols, in the stories we dismiss as madness. Look at Bruno's silent return, look at mine and understand. Some doors, once opened, slam shut on the world you knew, leaving you forever changed, forever haunted by the truth that is irrevocably out there. Second story, Whitley Strieber's Abduction. The autumn air in upstate New York held a crispness that usually invigorated my spirit, especially within the comforting embrace of my secluded cabin. Seeking refuge from the demanding world, I retreated to these woods, hoping to lose myself in the quiet solitude and wrestle with the next chilling tale my mind was brewing. Little did I suspect that the tranquility I so desperately craved would be shattered, not by the fictional terrors I penned, but by a reality far more horrifying than anything I could conjure. That night, the silence of the woods felt different, less like peace and more like a held breath. An unsettling prickle danced along my skin, a sense of being watched that seeped into the very marrow of my bones. The fire in the hearth crackled, but its warmth failed to reach the growing coldness that settled in the corners of the room, a coldness that felt unnatural, alien. I dismissed it at first, attributing it to the isolation, to the overactive imagination of a writer steeped in the macabre. But the feeling persisted, intensifying, a silent alarm ringing louder and louder within the quiet confines of my mind. Then, the light, not the warm, flickering glow of the fire, but a cold, piercing luminescence that flooded the cabin, casting long, distorted shadows that danced like specters on the walls. A wave of paralysis washed over me, pinning me to my armchair, stealing my breath, my will, my very ability to move. Fear, raw and primal, surged, a chilling premonition of something terrible about to unfold. I strained against the invisible bonds, desperate to understand, to escape. But my body remained unresponsive, a vessel suddenly devoid of its captain. It was in that moment of utter helplessness that they arrived. They were simply there, impossibly tall and slender, their forms stark against the unnatural light, their presence radiating an otherworldly coldness. And then I saw their eyes, vast black pools that seemed to swallow the light itself, eyes that held no warmth, no recognition, only an alien intelligence that pierced through me, stripping me bare. They took me. My cabin in upstate New York was more than just a retreat. It was a sanctuary, a place where I, Whitley Strieber, could wrestle with the shadows that danced in my imagination and spill them onto the page. As a horror writer, I thrived on exploring the unsettling corners of the human psyche, crafting tales that whispered of unseen terrors lurking just beyond the veil of the ordinary. But even my fictional creations paled in comparison to the dread that would soon consume my reality, a dread that began on a seemingly ordinary autumn night, deep within the comforting isolation of those woods. The crisp air and the vibrant hues of the fall foliage usually invigorated me, providing a stark contrast to the often dark landscapes of my stories. This cabin, nestled deep amongst the towering pines and whispering maples, was my haven, a place to escape the clamor of the world and reconnect with the primal solitude that fueled my creativity. It was a space filled with the familiar scent of wood smoke and old paper, a place where the rustling leaves and the hooting owls were usually my only companions, their sounds a soothing lullaby to my writer's soul. But that night, the familiar comfort of my retreat was subtly, disturbingly altered. An unnerving stillness settled over the woods, the usual symphony of nature muted, replaced by an oppressive silence that prickled at my senses. A coldness seeped into the cabin, a chill that went deeper than the autumn air could account for, a coldness that seemed to emanate from somewhere beyond the walls, beyond the known world. And then they came. These beings, these visitors from a realm beyond human comprehension, were the antithesis of everything familiar and comforting about my secluded world. Tall and impossibly slender, they moved with a silent grace that was both mesmerizing and terrifying. Their most striking feature, their eyes, were vast and black, devoid of warmth or recognizable emotion, reflecting an intelligence utterly alien and profoundly unsettling. They were silent observers, detached scientists, and I, in my isolated cabin, had become their unwilling subject, about to be swept away into a nightmare far beyond the scope of my darkest fictional imaginings. The initial cold probes were nothing compared to the invasion that followed. They weren't dissecting my flesh. They were dissecting my thoughts, my memories, my very essence. It was a violation far deeper than physical, a chilling intrusion into the sacred spaces of my mind, and I sensed they weren't merely observing. They were searching, seeking something specific within the labyrinth of my consciousness, something they desperately needed, leaving me exposed and utterly vulnerable. The chilling truth began to unfold, not in the physical realm, but within the very core of my being. The cold instruments and probing hands were mere distractions compared to the true violation, the invasion of my mind. They were sifting through my thoughts like archaeologists excavating ancient ruins, layer by layer, memory by memory. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, focused, as if they were searching for a specific artifact hidden deep within the vaults of my consciousness. This mental intrusion was disorienting, terrifyingly intimate. My thoughts were no longer my own. They felt exposed, vulnerable to their alien scrutiny. Fears I had buried deep within my subconscious, long-forgotten anxieties, were unearthed and laid bare before their unblinking black eyes. It was a psychic striptease, a forced confession of my innermost self to beings who held no concept of human privacy or dignity. I was an open book in a language they effortlessly deciphered, while I remained utterly ignorant of their motives, their desires, their very nature. My immediate goal in that sterile, otherworldly space was simply to endure, to survive this psychic vivisection. But even as I passively submitted to their probes, a flicker of defiance sparked within me. I would observe, I would remember, I would cling to every fragmented detail of this nightmare, desperate to salvage some understanding from the wreckage of my violated mind. I would become a witness, a chronicler of this impossible reality, so that even if my sanity frayed, some record of this truth would survive. Emerging back into the familiar world, my goal shifted. Survival was no longer enough. Understanding became paramount. I needed to decipher the purpose of their intrusion, to unravel the meaning behind the bewildering visions they had implanted in my mind. And more than that, I needed to share it, to break the suffocating silence, to warn humanity of the chilling reality I had glimpsed. But the first formidable obstacle loomed: disbelief. How could I possibly articulate the incomprehensible? How could I convince a world so firmly rooted in its rational, comfortable reality that the impossible had happened, that we were not alone and that they were watching? The night had begun like any other in my secluded cabin, the crackling fire, the rustling leaves, the comforting solitude. But the deceptive tranquility shattered without warning, irrevocably altering the course of my life. It wasn't a gradual shift, but a sudden, jarring intrusion that ripped through the fabric of my reality, leaving me stranded in a nightmare I couldn't comprehend. It started subtly, an almost imperceptible shift in the atmosphere, a prickle of unease that quickly escalated into a chilling certainty. I was not alone. Then, the light, an unnatural cold luminescence that flooded the cabin, paralyzing me in its stark embrace. And in that blinding light, they materialized. Tall, slender figures with eyes like black voids, radiating an alien presence that sent icy tendrils of fear snaking through my veins. There was no prelude, no explanation, no negotiation. One moment I was in my familiar world, the next I was being taken, lifted, floated, drawn out of my reality and into theirs. The cabin vanished, replaced by sterile corridors and cold metallic surfaces. The warmth of the fire gave way to an oppressive alien chill. My will, my agency, my very sense of self were stripped away, leaving me utterly powerless, a captive in a nightmare not of my making. This abduction, this violent intrusion into my life, was the inciting incident. It was the shattering of my comfortable reality, the abrupt plunge into the unknown. It was the event that propelled me from a life of relative normalcy into a desperate quest for understanding, a terrifying journey into the heart of an alien mystery. From that moment forward, my life was no longer my own. It was inextricably intertwined with the chilling reality of their existence, forever marked by the night they came and took me away. Emerging from the sterile confines of their world back into the familiar reality of my cabin was not a return to normalcy, but a descent into a different kind of torment. The physical marks were absent, but the psychic wounds were deep and festering. Sleep offered no escape, only a relentless replay of the abduction, a terrifying loop of black eyes and cold, probing instruments. The daylight hours were no less harrowing. Fragmented memories surfaced unbidden, jarring intrusions of alien landscapes, and unsettling procedures that left me breathless and disoriented. Every shadow seemed to hold a hidden form, every unusual sound in the woods a potential sign of their return. Paranoia became my unwelcome companion, whispering doubts and fueling a constant state of hypervigilance. My initial motivation to simply survive the abduction morphed into a desperate need to understand it. But this new quest was fraught with challenges. How could I articulate the incomprehensible? Who would believe a tale so outlandish, so utterly divorced from conventional reality? The fear of ridicule, of being branded insane, became a heavy weight, threatening to silence me. Yet, the chilling certainty of what I had experienced burned, too fiercely to be contained. I started to confide in my wife, Anne, her initial skepticism slowly giving way to concern as she witnessed my unraveling. Her support, tentative at first, became a lifeline, a fragile anchor in the storm raging within me. It was through her urging that I began to consider documenting my experience, a desperate attempt to make sense of the chaos and perhaps find someone else who understood, someone else who had seen the black eyes in the night. The journey to uncover the truth, to break the silence, had begun, a path fraught with uncertainty, ridicule, and the chilling possibility that they were still watching, still listening. Confiding in Anne was the first crack in the dam of denial I had built around myself, but it also unleashed a torrent of new anxieties. Her initial concern morphed into a tangible fear, not just for my sanity, but for our safety. The idyllic cabin, once our shared sanctuary, now felt like a vulnerable cage exposed to unseen eyes. The stakes were no longer just personal. They were impacting my marriage, my family. The decision to write communion became a tightrope walk. Sharing my truth meant risking ridicule, professional ruin, and the very real fear of being further targeted by them. But silence meant living, a lie, suffocating under the weight of a secret that threatened to consume me. Each word I wrote was an act of defiance, a dangerous gamble against forces I didn't understand. A desperate plea for connection in a world determined to deny the very reality that haunted my every waking moment and invaded my sleep. The tension mounted with each page, the chilling question echoing in my mind. Was I inviting more trouble by daring to speak? The act of writing Communion itself became a turning point, a desperate gamble to reclaim my narrative and confront the silence. Each word was a step further into the unknown, a deliberate provocation of the forces that had invaded my life. As the manuscript neared completion, a strange calm settled over me, a sense of resignation mixed with defiance. I had done what I could, poured my fragmented truth onto the page, and now the die was cast. The fear of ridicule remained, but it was overshadowed by a more profound anxiety. What would they do once my story was public? Had I broken some unspoken rule, invited further intrusion? The uncertainty was a constant gnawing companion, amplifying the already unbearable tension. Publication day arrived, and with it a tidal wave of reaction I could never have anticipated. The book soared, a controversial lightning rod in the cultural landscape, igniting fervent belief and equally vehement scorn. Suddenly, I was thrust into the harsh glare of the public eye, no longer just a horror writer, but a reluctant figurehead of a phenomenon most of the world dismissed as fantasy. This was the precipice, the point of no return. My life, my sanity, my very credibility hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of either validation or utter destruction, all dependent on how the world would receive the impossible truth I had dared to reveal. The initial wave of public reaction to Communion was a chaotic storm, a maelstrom of voices both validating and condemning. But beneath the surface of the media frenzy, something quieter, more unsettling began to emerge. Letters started arriving, then phone calls, then hushed, in-person encounters with individuals who spoke of shared nightmares, of identical black eyes staring from the darkness, of missing time and inexplicable procedures. These were the echoes, the confirmations that chipped away at the wall of isolation I had felt. They were strangers, yet we were bound by a terrifying common thread, a shared secret that society at large refused to acknowledge. In their stories, I found fragments of my own experience reflected, details too specific, too consistent to be dismissed as mere coincidence or mass hysteria. One contact, a woman from California, described symbols she had seen during her abduction, symbols that resonated with vague impressions lingering at the edge of my memory. It was a small piece of the puzzle, a minor resolution in the grand scheme of things, but it ignited a spark of hope, a sense that perhaps understanding wasn't entirely beyond reach. Perhaps there were others who held pieces of this terrifying truth, pieces that, when combined, could reveal a larger, more coherent picture. But this nascent hope was interwoven with a growing unease. The feeling of being watched intensified, becoming more palpable, more intrusive. It wasn't just paranoia. It was a distinct sense of observation, as if their presence was growing stronger, closer. Dreams became more vivid, more unsettling, filled with fragmented images and whispers that hinted at a future encounter, a looming confrontation. The minor resolutions, the small confirmations, felt like breadcrumbs leading not to answers, but deeper into the labyrinth, towards a climax that felt both inevitable and terrifyingly unknown. The stage was set, the tension coiled tight, and I knew with chilling certainty that the quiet before the storm was about to break. The growing chorus of voices from fellow abductees, while validating, also amplified the sense of danger. We were no longer isolated individuals suffering in silence. We were a collective, a nascent community unknowingly linked by a terrifying shared experience. This newfound connection offered a fragile sense of solidarity, but it also felt like painting a larger target on our backs, attracting unwanted attention from forces we couldn't comprehend. The whispers in my dreams intensified, no longer just fragmented images, but coherent messages, warnings, or perhaps invitations. The line between reality and nightmare blurred further. Objects moved in my cabin, shadows flickered in my peripheral vision, and the metallic scent became more pronounced, a constant chilling reminder of their presence. Anne, initially supportive, now watched me with a mixture of fear and concern, the strain of the relentless pressure taking its toll on our relationship. My credibility was constantly under attack, skeptics and debunkers lining up to dissect my story, eager to tear down what they couldn't understand. The final obstacle was not external ridicule, nor the fear for my safety, but the internal struggle to maintain my sanity, to hold onto the fragile thread of reason in the face of the overwhelming irrationality of my experience. The stakes were no longer just about revealing the truth to the world. They were about my own survival, my own mind. The narrative threads were converging, the whispers growing louder, the pressure mounting to an unbearable peak. I was standing on the precipice, knowing that the climax was inevitable, a confrontation with the unknown that would either break me completely or perhaps finally offer a glimpse of understanding in the terrifying darkness. The final descent began not with a blinding light, but with a suffocating darkness, a profound absence of light that swallowed the cabin whole. The familiar silence returned, but now it was charged, heavy with anticipation, a prelude to the inevitable. They were here again, not as intruders, but as something else. Expected guests, judges. The fear was no longer frantic, but a cold, resigned dread. This time there was no paralysis, no struggle. I stood, facing the darkness, facing them, armed only with the truth I had dared to speak. The mental intrusion was immediate, more intense than before, a torrent of alien consciousness flooding my mind. But this time, something was different. Fear was still present, but alongside it, a nascent defiance, a hard-won sense of self. I had faced my terror, I had shared my story, and in doing so, I had found a strange kind of power. I didn't resist their probes, but I didn't yield to them completely. I observed, I remembered, I held on to the core of my being, the truth of my experience, refusing to let it be erased. Then, a sense of understanding. Not in words, not in concepts I could grasp, but a visceral communication, an exchange of something beyond language. It was fleeting, ambiguous, yet undeniably present. And then, as abruptly as it began, it ceased. The darkness receded, replaced by the soft glow of dawn filtering through the cabin windows. They were gone. Again. But this time, the silence held, a different quality, not of dread, but of acknowledgement. The world outside would continue to doubt, to scoff, to deny. But for me, the climax was not about external validation, but internal resolution. I had faced the abyss, I had spoken my truth, and I had survived. The questions remained unanswered, perhaps unanswerable, but the fear had transformed, tempered by a strange sense of purpose. They are real. They are watching. And now you know too. Open your eyes. Look at the sky. Dare to consider the impossible. The truth is out there, waiting to be seen, waiting to be acknowledged. The echoes of that night in the cabin still resonate within me, a constant hum beneath the surface of my daily life. The fear hasn't vanished entirely, but it has transformed, tempered by understanding and a strange sense of purpose. I may never fully comprehend their motives, their nature, or the true meaning of the visions they implanted in my mind. The questions linger unanswered, shrouded in the impenetrable mystery of the alien other. Yet the experience, terrifying as it was, has stripped away the comfortable illusions of my previous reality, forcing me to confront a universe far stranger, far more complex, and far more awe-inspiring than I could have ever imagined in my horror fiction writing. Communion was not just an act of catharsis, but an act of defiance, a refusal to be silenced by fear or ridicule. It was a journey into the heart of disbelief, a desperate attempt to bridge the gap between my reality and the world's denial. The book became a mirror, reflecting back the hidden anxieties of humanity, our unspoken fears of the unknown, our fragile place in the vast cosmic tapestry. My fate remains intertwined with this mystery, forever marked by the black eyes and the chilling realization that we are not alone. And perhaps that is the ultimate lesson: to shed our anthropocentric arrogance, to open our minds to the unimaginable possibilities that lie beyond the confines of our perceived reality. Look up at the night sky. Listen to the silence of the woods. Dare to believe in the unbelievable. The truth, in all its terrifying and wondrous glory, awaits. If you're enjoying this and want to support the channel in bringing more chilling stories like this, any contribution is greatly appreciated. The donation link is just below this video. It's safe, easy, and fast. No registration required. Even the smallest support means so much. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Third story, Gov Cover-Up. Alien contact is real. They began subtly, fragments of memory flickering at the edges of my consciousness, whispers in the dead of night. Not dreams, not exactly, but something sharper, colder, undeniably real. Visions of star-dusted voids and geometric patterns etched themselves onto the back of my eyelids, and always the presence. An unseen observer, a silent watcher in the shadows, just beyond the veil of the ordinary. From childhood they visited, not in grand, theatrical displays of light and sound, but in the quiet hours, when the world held its breath. They came as whispers, murmuring secrets of a universe far grander, far stranger than the one humanity collectively agreed upon. Truths that resonated deep within my bones, yet defied the logic and reason of the waking world. They call her my alien mother, a concept as bizarre as it is profoundly intimate. She isn't a being of flesh and blood, at least not in any way I can comprehend. More a consciousness, a guiding presence, a voice in the silent spaces of my mind. She teaches me, shows me glimpses of realities unseen, dimensions unheard of, knowledge that sets me apart, adrift in a sea of human ignorance. People laugh, of course. Disbelief is the shield they wield against the unsettling unknown. Crazy, they whisper behind cupped hands, their eyes laced with pity and fear. Doctors offer diagnoses, therapists offer coping mechanisms, all neatly packaged within the confines of accepted reality. But their explanations fall flat, hollow against the weight of my lived truth. I know what I know. etched into the very core of my being. They are real, and their reality is as valid, as tangible as the ground beneath our feet, even if the world refuses to see it. My world is painted in shades of grey, a perpetual twilight zone between what is perceived and what is real. It's 2010, suburban UK. A landscape of neat gardens and quiet streets, a veneer of normalcy stretched thin over a reality far more unsettling than anyone suspects. I am an ordinary person, or so I appear, navigating the mundane rhythms of daily life, work, bills, fleeting social interactions. But beneath the surface, a different existence unfolds. A secret history etched in the silent language of the stars. Since childhood, this double life has been my constant companion. The world sees a quiet, somewhat withdrawn individual. They don't see the child who woke in terror night after night, haunted by visions of impossible landscapes and the chilling sensation of being watched. They don't know the adolescent who learned to silence the whispers, to bury the memories deep within the recesses of the mind, to mimic normalcy for self-preservation. My alien mother is not a figure in my family album, but a presence woven into the very fabric of my being. She is a teacher, a guide, a confidant in a universe where human understanding falters. Her motivations are not easily grasped by a human mind, perhaps exploration, observation, or something far beyond my current comprehension. Our connection is a silent symphony of shared consciousness, a bridge spanning unimaginable distances, forged in the crucible of countless sleepless nights. My motivation in sharing this story is not for validation or even belief. It is a desperate attempt to articulate the inarticulable, to give voice to a reality that threatens to consume me. The world around me, steeped in its comfortable denial, is a stage for my solitary drama. Their disbelief, their laughter, their dismissal, these are the walls of my prison, isolating me further in a truth too terrifying, too extraordinary for them to accept. And in this isolation, the horror of my reality takes root and blossoms. The whispers are no longer confined to the night. They seep into the day, a constant hum beneath the surface of reality. She, my alien mother, is growing, insistent. Her lessons are no longer gentle explorations of the cosmos, but urgent directives, veiled warnings. The truth is fracturing, splitting into layers I'm only beginning to peel back. And what I'm finding beneath is terrifying. It's not just about knowledge, about understanding the universe. It's about something far more personal, far more dangerous. They aren't just observers, they are participants, manipulators, and my role isn't what I thought it was. The laughter of the world outside is fading, replaced by a different kind of attention, colder, sharper. People are noticing the changes, the subtle shifts in my being, the things I can't quite hide anymore. They see something different, and the comfortable disbelief is turning to suspicion, to fear. The secret I carry is no longer mine alone. It's radiating outwards, a beacon in the mundane, and the consequences are closing in. My goal, if I can even call it that, is simply to survive. To navigate this impossible reality without shattering completely, but survival is becoming increasingly complex. The alien mother's urgings have shifted from gentle lessons to insistent commands. She speaks of a nexus point, a coming convergence, though the meaning remains shrouded in cryptic pronouncements and unsettling visions. My initial goal of quiet coexistence has been replaced by a desperate need to understand her purpose. to decipher the nature of this nexus point and its connection to me. The primary obstacle is, as always, the wall of human disbelief. To even begin to address these directives, I need to operate within the mundane world to maintain the facade of normalcy. Yet the more insistent the alien contact becomes, the harder it is to conceal. The heightened senses, the intuitive flashes, they are becoming more pronounced, harder to explain away as mere coincidence or anxiety. People are noticing. My colleagues at work, my increasingly worried parents, even casual acquaintances, their glances linger, their questions become sharper. A new subplot emerges in the form of subtle observation. It started with fleeting glimpses of unfamiliar cars parked down the street, the feeling of being watched even when alone. Now it's more overt. A man in a dark suit who seems to appear a little too often in my peripheral vision. Unmarked vehicles that linger just a little too long. Is it paranoia, fueled by my already fractured reality? Or is it something more tangible, a consequence of the secret radiating outwards? My relationship with the alien mother is evolving, becoming less of a mentorship and more of a partnership, or perhaps manipulation. I am no longer just a student, but an instrument. Her directives are becoming more specific, demanding actions in the waking world, tasks that blur the already thin line between my two realities. The initial awe and wonder are fading, replaced by a growing unease, a sense of being used for purposes I don't fully comprehend. And the silence of my isolation is now punctuated by a different kind of whisper, the chilling premonition of being watched, not just by them but by others. The inciting incident arrived not in a flash of light or a cosmic whisper, but in the cold, sterile environment of my office. A seemingly innocuous email from an unknown address, subject line simply, "We know." The message itself was brief, chillingly direct. "We are aware of your unique experiences. We understand you are in contact. We need to talk." No name, no organization, just the stark, undeniable confirmation that my secret was no longer safe. The routine of my day shattered instantly. The mundane tasks on my screen blurred. The office hum faded into a background drone. The feeling of being watched intensified, morphing from a vague unease into a palpable threat. This wasn't just paranoia, this was real, concrete. Someone, some organization knew, and they wanted to talk. Not to help, not to understand, but to what? Control, exploit, dissect. The alien mother's whispers amplified, now laced with urgency bordering on panic. "They see," she communicated, the thought-emotion raw and unfiltered. The veil thins. The nexus approaches. "You are vulnerable." Her directives became sharper, more insistent. "Find the place, the convergence point before they do." The cryptic pronouncements suddenly took on a terrifying clarity. The nexus point wasn't just an abstract cosmic concept, it was a location. A place that these observers in the mundane world also sought. And I was caught in the crossfire. My motivation shifted from survival to action. I could no longer afford to be passive, to simply endure. The email was a gauntlet thrown, a challenge I couldn't ignore. My goal now was twofold: to understand who these observers were and what they wanted, and to find this nexus point before they did, guided by the increasingly frantic whispers of my alien mother. The comfortable gray of my existence had been ripped away, replaced by the stark binary of predator and prey. And the hunt had begun. The email was just the beginning. The digital intrusion was swiftly followed by a more tangible one. A phone call, late that night. The voice on the other end smooth, professional, utterly devoid of warmth. "We received your message," it stated, a chillingly polite euphemism for my entire existence. "We understand you have questions. We can provide answers, but we need to meet." The meeting took place in a sterile, unremarkable office building, miles from my home. The man who greeted me introduced himself as Agent Davies. His eyes were sharp, assessing, and his handshake was cold. He offered tea, pleasantries, a veneer of normalcy that did little to mask the underlying threat. "We know about your contact," he said, leaning forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "The entity you refer to as your mother." The casualness with which he uttered those words sent a shiver down my spine. They knew everything. Their offer was framed as help, a chance to understand my experiences, to manage my condition. But their questions were probing, invasive, their interest less in my well-being and more in acquisition. They spoke of the nexus point, confirming the alien mother's warnings, but their understanding was different, colder, more strategic. They saw it as a resource, a point of control, a weapon, perhaps. Davies revealed fragments of information carefully curated to pique my interest and manipulate my fear. They knew about others like me, contactees, they called us, individuals with similar experiences, some cooperative, some not. He hinted at a history, a hidden war waged in the shadows, a battle for influence, for control of something far larger than myself. He mentioned a place, a location they believed to be central to the nexus point, an abandoned research facility in a remote part of the countryside. My motivation twisted again. Fear of these observers mingled with a desperate need to understand the true nature of the nexus point. Was it a threat? An opportunity? And what was the alien mother's real agenda in all of this? Doubt began to gnaw at me, poisoning the fragile trust I had placed in her. Her whispers became more urgent, more demanding, pushing me towards the research facility, urging me to find it before they did. But they already seemed to be one step ahead. And I was caught in a game far more complex and far more dangerous than I could have ever imagined. Agent Davies's help came with strings, invisible but tightening. Surveillance became overt, phone calls monitored, online activity tracked, even my commute subtly shadowed. The polite veneer cracked, revealing a ruthless efficiency. They weren't asking for cooperation, they were demanding it. Their version of answers felt more like interrogation, their management tactics like subtle coercion. The alien mother's whispers intensified their urgency, but a new element crept in, a chilling detachment. Her directives were becoming less about guidance and more about manipulation. Visions flashed in my mind, not of cosmic wonders, but of strategic calculations, of me as a tool, a conduit, a means to an end. Doubt bloomed, a poisonous flower in the garden of my mind. Was she truly a mother, or something else entirely? The organization's knowledge extended beyond my contact. Davies revealed they knew about the research facility, the supposed nexus point. They believed it was a site of previous alien interaction, a place of heightened energy, a key to something. He offered a choice framed as cooperation: lead them to the facility, help them understand, and in return, they would protect me, manage my condition. But the protective tone felt like a cage being offered. And the alien mother's frantic whispers warned against them, painting them as predators, as usurpers. She urged me to go to the facility alone, to claim the nexus for her, for us. The dilemma was agonizing. Trust the known manipulators in suits or the increasingly suspect alien presence in my mind. Both paths felt fraught with peril. And the pressure was mounting, squeezing the air from my lungs, leaving me gasping for a truth I could no longer discern. The decision was a razor's edge: cooperate with Agent Davies and his shadowy organization, or follow the increasingly desperate directives of the alien mother. Neither path offered comfort, both reeked of manipulation. Davies promised control, management of my condition, but his eyes betrayed a colder agenda, a hunger to exploit the unknown. The alien mother's whispers, once guiding and serene, now pulsed with a frantic urgency tinged with a chilling calculation. Trust was a shattered illusion, leaving only stark choices in a landscape of fear. The drive to the research facility was a journey into the heart of the nightmare. Each mile devoured was a step further from the mundane world, deeper into the labyrinth of alien agendas and human machinations. Fear was a constant passenger, yet beneath it, a strange resolve began to solidify. The whispers in my mind were a tempest, yet amidst the storm, a flicker of defiance ignited. No longer a passive recipient of alien contact, nor a pawn in a government game, I was hurtling towards the nexus point, towards a confrontation, ready to face whatever truth, however terrifying, awaited me. The climax was imminent, the convergence point looming, a crucible where my fate, and perhaps more, would be decided. The abandoned research facility loomed out of the desolate landscape like a skeletal beast, its rusted gates groaning open as I approached, as if in morbid welcome. The air crackled with an unseen energy, a palpable hum that resonated deep within my bones, amplifying the whispers in my mind to a near-deafening roar. The alien mother's instructions became fragmented, panicked, urging me forward deeper into the decaying complex. The facility was a labyrinth of crumbling concrete and twisted metal, echoing with the ghosts of forgotten experiments. Equipment lay scattered, remnants of a science twisted towards unknown purposes, hinting at unsettling research, experiments that blurred the lines between worlds. A sense of violation permeated the air, a psychic residue of fear and desperation clinging to the decaying walls. I wasn't alone, not just the whispers in my head, but a tangible presence, a coldness that settled at the base of my neck, the prickling sensation of being watched from the shadows. Minor confrontations manifested as unsettling occurrences. Flickering lights in corridors that should have been dead, the rustling sound of movement just beyond my line of sight, shadows stretching and distorting in impossible ways. Each step deeper into the facility was a descent further into the unknown, a test of nerve, a dance on the precipice of sanity. The whispers shifted again, no longer frantic, but expectant, a sense of anticipation, a chilling calm before the storm. The nexus point, she communicated, was close, but her tone was unsettlingly detached, almost predatory. The alliance I thought we had was fraying, replaced by a cold certainty, that I was merely a piece in a game far grander and far more ruthless than I could possibly comprehend. The stage was set, the climax was upon me, and the resolution, whatever form it might take, promised to be devastating. Deeper inside the facility, the humming intensified, solidifying into a physical vibration that rattled my teeth and blurred my vision. The whispers in my mind became a cacophony, fragmented directives and unsettling images swirling together, threatening to overwhelm my sanity. The air grew colder, heavier, charged with an energy that prickled my skin and raised the hairs on my arms. The nexus point was close. The alien mother communicated, her voice now devoid of any warmth, any pretense of affection. Only cold, hard purpose remained. The final obstacle manifested not as a physical barrier, but as a mental one. The whispers shifted again, revealing fragments of the alien mother's true agenda. The nexus point wasn't a convergence of cosmic energies, but a doorway, a portal. And I wasn't meant to understand it or control it, but to open it, to be the key. The emotional stakes skyrocketed. My agency, my very self, was being reduced to a tool, a mere component in a plan. I didn't understand, orchestrated by a being I no longer trusted. The narrative threads tightened to a breaking point. The organization was out there. I could feel their presence closing in. The subtle tremors in the air hinting at their approach. The alien mother's relentless pushing. The looming threat of the unknown organization. The chilling realization of my own insignificance in this cosmic game. All converged, pressing down on me, crushing me under the weight of impending revelation. The climax wasn't just approaching, it was here, a suffocating presence, a terrifying precipice on the edge of reality. The chamber at the heart of the facility pulsed with blinding light, the humming now a physical force threatening to tear me apart. The alien mother's voice was a command, stripped bare of any guise of care. Open it, now. But looking into that swirling vortex of energy, I saw not wonder but a chilling emptiness, a void hungry to consume. This wasn't guidance, it was exploitation. Suddenly, the sterile air crackled with human voices, harsh and amplified. Agent Davies and his team breached the chamber, weapons raised, their faces grimly determined. "Step away from the device," Davies barked, his eyes locking onto mine, cold and calculating. Caught between the manipulative alien presence and the predatory human agency, a stark realization crashed over me. Neither side saw me as anything but a means to an end. In that blinding light, in the crossfire of two predatory forces, a spark of defiance ignited. This wasn't my destiny. I was not a key to be turned, a tool to be wielded. With a surge of will, fueled by years of fear and isolation, I rejected both their agendas. I focused my will, my alien-enhanced senses, not to open the portal, but to close it, to sever the connection. The chamber convulsed, energy lashing out, and the whispers in my mind screamed in protest, then abruptly silenced. The light subsided, the humming faded, leaving a ringing silence and the stunned faces of Davies' team. The nexus point was inert. The portal, for now, was closed. I had made my choice. But the silence was heavy, pregnant with uncertainty. What comes next is unknown. The unseen world remains, and perhaps it watches. Question everything. Believe nothing blindly, and always Trust your own truth, however strange it may seem. The silence that followed the severing of the connection was deafening, a stark contrast to the relentless whispers that had haunted my life. Agent Davies and his team remained, their weapons lowered, their faces a mixture of bewilderment and grudging respect. They had witnessed something inexplicable, something that defied their carefully constructed reality, and in that shared moment of the unknown, a fragile truce was formed. They left eventually, taking with them only questions and a palpable unease. I was alone, in the ruins of the facility, and in the ruins of my former life. The whispers are gone. The alien mother is silent. Whether I truly severed the connection or merely silenced it remains a chilling uncertainty. The world seems quieter now, less vibrant, yet paradoxically more real. The fear hasn't vanished. It has simply transformed, matured into a cautious awareness. I am no longer naive to the vastness of reality, to the forces unseen that shape our world. The laughter of those who dismissed me no longer stings. Their ignorance is their prison, not mine. My path is solitary, marked by the weight of what I know and the constant vigilance of what might return. But in this solitude, I have found a strange, hard-won peace, a resilience forged in fear, a truth claimed in the face of disbelief. The journey is far from over. Perhaps it has only just begun. Question everything. Believe nothing blindly. And always, trust your own truth, however strange it may seem. So, what did you think of this story? Did it scare you? Was there a part that gave you chills or stuck with you the most? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. If you've had a similar experience or have suggestions for improving future videos, let me know too. Thank you for watching and being part of this amazing community. See you in the next story.